Welcome back, Pirate Crew. It's your captain, Yeehaw Yadam, and for today's video, we're back to the channel's roots. We're going to go back to a local gameplay tournament video. This is from the finals match that I played in last week's tournament. Now, I'm playing Luffy again. I guess this is becoming a Luffy channel, slowly but surely, but it's mostly because I'm too lazy to unsleeve my cards. More than anything, it's just been pretty hard. So, as I'm excited to play other decks, I decided to take Luffy for one more locals to see how he would do, and we ended up going undefeated. So, a little bit of a spoiler there, but I wanted to showcase this match because the Zoro matchup isn't one that's necessarily easy, and it's one that a lot of people struggle with when they're playing Luffy versus an aggro deck. So, I want to go ahead and highlight how I'm able to handle this matchup, even going second. So, my opponent goes first. He whiffs on turn 1. This is after we both mulligan. He won the die roll, chooses to go first. I go ahead and I put 2 on Luffy because I also whiff on a Curly D and a 1-drop this turn. So it's absolutely fine. You know, he had a slow start, but my start is equally as slow. I attached the 2 Dawn just, you know, as a friendly little funny hee haha. But this matchup is a little questionable, right? Like I could keep 2 up to like bluff a Red Hawk here and, you know, all that stuff, but I don't really mind. Whether he attacks me with 7, whether he attacks me with 5, I was probably going to most likely accept that damage. So he summons a Brook, which means his hand is really clunky. I love seeing people summon, you know, 2K. So I swing here with 5 because I just know that he's going to take the 5. I do have a Nico Robin and a Nami in hand. I could have gone Nico Robin, leader ability, attach another one, not play the Nami, swing for 7, but he'd take the 5 likely as he'd take the 7. And if he gives me a 1K counter, I'm also genuinely okay with that because I understand where this game is heading, and usually that's what the case is. In my top 16 match where I played the mirror match Luffy versus Luffy, or just versus any red deck, if you swing after you summon a character, which Luffy kind of he wants you to do, right? The deck leader wants you to just go summon a character, use leader ability, you know, just so you get that maximum efficiency of Dawn. But if you do that, you get immediately punished by like a jet pistol in life, which is exactly what happened to me, and I just a little traumatized by that. I'm just playing around. It goes back to my opponent's turn. Now I have a Nami and a Nico Robin, which is a great setup now. This always forces this exact combo. So Nico Robin, for those of you that don't know, has a hidden text under it that says if you're playing versus an aggressive deck that plays red cards in it, either A, Jet Pistol, or B, Otama Vista. So he's setting up for an Otama Vista here. I'm not going to give him a 2K. Although I could have. He knows that I have the Monkey D Luffy 2K here, and he goes Otama Vista, which I'm absolutely fine. Summoning Otama isn't the end of the world for Zoro, but that Otama's likeliness to attack is super duper slim. So I'm now going to 6 Dawn. I have a Zoro in my hand. I think I have like 2 Zoros. My hand is looking pretty darn stacked, and I mean his board, although he has like a non-menacing board, if he just attaches a couple Dawn in an efficient manner, that can go ahead and become very scary very quickly. So I have another Nami here. Gonna go add me a 5-drop. There was no like counter power cards to grab, because if I could have grabbed a counter power card, I would. Most likely because I'm just full of counters. Now he asked me what the other Nami added, and I went ahead and showed him. I'll use leader ability. Gonna attach 1 Dawn, swing for 6. I'm swinging for 6 mostly because A, this threatens I can summon another Luffy here, right? Or I can go ahead and attach Dawn aggressively. I can do a couple things, but at the end of the day, he doesn't see it, right? I want him to go ahead and see the Dawn management and give me cards. So he does combo out of the 6, gives me a 2K, and then I go ahead and I Vista his Vista. Mostly because I just want to try to mitigate as much damage as possible. I also get to keep up 2 Dawn here, just for a Red Hawk. Now, it's probably better, I do have a Zoro in hand, to have developed the Zoro and kept the Vista in hand. Forced him, now that he has 2 guys, that if he wants to play around Red Hawk, he can go ahead and has to attach a Dawn to each before he attacks, which is like a really... I'm taxing a 3 Dawn for leaving up 2. And that's probably would have been a better move there than summoning the Vista. The Vista also is a 1K counter in hand. It probably held it, honestly. The only time you really want a Vista is when you're playing versus Wall. And that's really about it. So he goes ahead and he's thinking about what he wants to do here. He's going to go ahead and attach 3 Dawn to the Brook, which is a little more than you want. This makes the Brook a 7K, which is like, it's just too good not to Red Hawk. Especially I left the Dawn up. I get to remove a 1-drop from the board, and I get to stop an attack. I'm super duper down with that. And this means that me going into now my 8 turn, I have like a lot of space, and then my next turn I can just clear his board and then just summon a bunch of dudes, and then he's in for a World of Hurt. He's gonna swing at me for 9. Yeah, I'm not gonna give him the cards. I get another Whitebeard. So my life has been no counters, which is not what you want to see from the homeboys. So I'll go Vista into Brook. If he wants to save it, like, sure. But I'm just trying to get cards out of his hand and then turn my entire board sideways and then make it so that he has to clear my board and then I get to go Whitebeard and win the game. Right, that's kind of what you want to go ahead and do. So I'm moving my Dawn out and allocating it appropriately. I have to think about how I want to go ahead and do this turn. I'm going to use 1 Dawn here on my Luffy. And then I still have 7 Dawn to work with. I'm going to go ahead and Zoro here. Still haven't used leader ability. Going to take the 5. I'm going to place another Zoro onto the board. Use ability here. Swing for 6. And then I still have 8 Dawn up. But yeah, I'm going 6, 5, 6. He counters out of it. And I do believe I pass the turn to him. I do have a Radical Beam in hand now. And I keep the Dawn up. So I did want to just develop cards and turn them sideways. So as you can see here, I have 3 blockers. And I have like an 8 card hand. Sure. Clear board versus Zoro feels kind of nice, right? Because if he wants to go ahead and deal damage to me, he's going to have to equip a lot of Dawn to his leader. So if he overcommits into his leader, he falls into the Radical Beam and doesn't develop, which is really, really bad for him. If he goes ahead and doesn't do that, and he summons a bunch of dudes here to deal with my board, then I get time to play Whitebeard. If he plays Whitebeard, doesn't necessarily matter, right? Because I'm going to play my Whitebeard. So he's going to go and he's at 7k, which is exactly where I'm going to Radical Beam no matter what, right? I'm not going to take this hit, because if I do take this hit, Whitebeard plus a ton of Dawn on Zoro next turn is probably lethal, so I can't allow that to happen, right? Just losing the game like that feels terrible. So he goes 7 onto the Vista, and then that card I'm definitely not going to defend, but had he gone the 7 into the Zoro or my leader, that would have taken the Radical Beam, and he didn't want to play into the Radical Beam, which I understand, but you kind of got to get those cards out of my hand, right? So you can later on in future turns have more counter power to play around with. So I'm going to go ahead and trigger my Whitebeard leader, targeting my leader. Now I'm 7k. I'm going to use my leader ability and I'm going to swing at you for 8. There's no point in attaching any Dawn to Zoro. I could have swung 7-7, but then I'm out. I don't play I don't have the Radical Beam up, and I didn't really want to do that, right? So I want him to have like no possible other attacking targets than me, because I have my Radical Beam up. He's going to go down to 2 life here. So now we're equivalent in life, and if he has to have a Whitebeard here in order to just not die, like it just is what it is. But it's going to be very difficult for him to come back onto this board. He's either going to have to rebuild here, and Zoro has a tough time getting to 7k initially. And then another problem with that is that he also doesn't have creatures on the board to even allow him to attack those numbers in the first place. So he goes ahead and attaches a Dawn to Zoro. And yeah, Whitebeard's huge. Whitebeard in Zoro is a crazily strong card, because for 1 Dawn on the leader, you're swinging 11k, and that's just a perfect threshold for like Radical Beam 2k. It's always 2 cards, or it's always like 2 event spells, which is very, very difficult to deal with. But as you can see here, my main theory was take a bunch of damage, keep my hand high, and then deal with his board, and then now he has to come at my board or come at me, but my hand's too big to deal with, and then eventually I just outvalue him. With my just very powerful cards. Unfortunately for me, I didn't really grab a lot of counter power, and one of my biggest mistakes was summoning a Vista this game. But I'd have technically 1 more counter power in my hand had I not done that. So he goes ahead and summons a Nami. Nami's going to go ahead and grab him a 1000 Sunny, but as you can see here, by Nami grabbing him a 1000 Sunny, I'm not really afraid. That card's never really going to do anything to me. I'm kind of like untouchable by that card. I do have another Whitebeard in my hand, because my next turn is most definitely summon a Whitebeard and then keep all the 2Ks in my hand as healthy as possible, so that I can just defend his turn. That's all I have to do. I just have to outlast 2 turns. Because he definitely, with his hand size of 6 cards, cannot handle my Whitebeard. The double Whitebeard. He just most certainly cannot. So he's already used 2 Dawn. To even attempt to attack my leader, he has to put another Dawn on his leader. And then we'll see how he goes from there. If he just hits minimums, it's not great for me, because I don't have a lot of 1Ks in my hand. Just in general, the red decks do not play a lot of 1Ks, and the 1Ks are really pivotal cards like Nico Robin and things like that. So he's going to go ahead and Otama my Zoro, place 2 Dawn under the Whitebeard, and then now Whitebeard's hitting me for 13, which is if I Radical Beam on 7k, it's just I'm 11, then I have to give 2k and another card. It's 3 cards to get out of this hit, and I just cannot afford to do that, so I take the hit. Unfortunately, the hit is another non-counterable card. So such is life, and he is able to remove an attacker, so excuse me. So it's not great for me, but at the same time, it's not terrible for me. He's already summoned 2 Otamas this game, and he's pitched 2. So I know at this exact point there are 4 Otamas in the trash, in the graveyard this turn. So he's going to go ahead and swing at me for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is 11, and that's just exactly Radical Beam. And that's the thing. He did need to put 1 more point of damage into me to make my next turn really, really hard. But since he was unable to, I'm in a mighty fine spot, right? So I don't have to keep up Dawn for the Radical Beam this turn. I just have to push him. So I swing 5 at the leader. Let's see what he wants to go ahead and do here. I believe he does defend this 5. And my turn is I can't summon any of the cards that have a counter in my hand. Now I can go ahead and I have double Luffy in hand. I can use my Dawn to summon double Luffy. That's like, that ends up being a 5, 6, 7, 10 to go for lethal. But then I immediately lose on the crackback. Like there's no winning like an amalgamation of Dawn under the Zoro and the Whitebeard. If he has a Makino, I automatically lose. So that's definitely not the play I can go. And I'm trying to count. I have exactly 2 2Ks and 2 1Ks in my hand at this time. I have a like 9-card hand, but only 4 of them are really active cards. He's aware of one of the cards in my hand, which is a jet pistol, and the rest is actually invisible to him. So from his standpoint, my hand could be just a bunch of 2Ks, but it really isn't. That's how you have to play these games sometimes. So I'm trying to think of how I want to go ahead about doing this turn. If I can remove his Whitebeard, that would be fantastic. But if I'm unable to remove the Whitebeard, I'm in a really bad spot. So I go ahead and summon my other Whitebeard, trigger, targeting my leader, swing at his leader for 7. Now he has 1 Dawn up, which signals to me that he has a Radical Beam. And Radical Beam is just a really powerful card that you have to respect. A lot of people do play it, and a lot of people don't, but you got to play around that specific card. If I go for 7 here and he takes the 7, that's worst case scenario for me. I really wanted to bait out the Radical Beam here, because then if I do bait out the Radical Beam, I can use leader ability plus the extra Dawn. It gets a jet pistol. It's irrelevant. The Whitebeards by themselves will win me the game. I'm going to use leader ability here. So he took the damage, didn't do the Radical Beam. So since he took the damage, I have to now push him, right? So swing 12 at the leader and KO the Nami, because just to remove some sort of shenanigans. He can keep the Otama because that's just 2k less, and he does end up taking the 12, right? That's just too much to counter out of, right? Had he given me the Radical Beam when I hit him for 7, I would have swung 12 at the Whitebeard, and he'd have to give me 2 more cards, and then he'd be in a game state of, surely I have 2 more life, but I have no cards in hand, so I have to win this game. And I don't think he can win this game from that standpoint, right? So I was just trying to whittle his hand no matter what. It's either hit leader or hit the Whitebeard. One or the other was going to happen that turn. So he gave me three cards? No, he gave me 1 card and 2 life instead of giving me 4 cards. So he has a Gordon in hand, which is not a card. Radical Beam is not a card. He has no rushers, has the Sunny-kun. And it ends up being like there is some sort of... I ended up calculating. I looked at my board state and and that's what took me so long on that turn, was the fact that I had to understand how much counter power I could possibly have to get out of this. And it was, if he hits me for exactly 13-13 and the last card in my life doesn't have any counter, I lose the game. Now, I thought that to myself and I was like, that really sucks. But why would anyone ever go 13-13, right? Like, what is the math behind that you're doing, right? Especially with 8 cards in my hand. So I don't think that's an easy thing to have created or calculated. So I don't think that I have to necessarily play around it with, especially showing a 7-card hand to my opponent. So we're going to go ahead and see if he's able to combust the algorithm, because that's exactly put 2 Dawn on Whitebeard, swing, blow up a Nami for whatever reason, and then just go rest of the Dawn on Zoro. And that's the only way he can win this game. But it's really hard to calculate that. So he goes and puts 4 Dawn on Zoro and swings, and then that's just 9. So he's going for a 9er, and I get to go 2k, 1k. And exactly, if you go 9, that's just not it. I can defend all the 9s because I just have to make sure that the Whitebeard doesn't connect. As long as the Whitebeard doesn't connect, we're in a mighty fine spot. He's going to go ahead and swing at me for another 9, and I'm able to combo out of the other 9, and that's basically it. So he did swing at me with those numbers, which were just not enough. Again, 13-13 would have been able to do it, because the last card of my life, and I show him here, it was a non-counter, because there's no way without any Dawn up, he's able to, at this point in time, save himself, right? Because I just go 5, 10, 20, and there's just no amount of cards in your hand that can get out of that one. So I hope this game helps you guys understand my thought process as I'm playing the game. As I'm playing Luffy, this is more of a local setting, so I'm having fun, we're talking. So that Vista play, even though it wasn't necessarily the best play, it got me there eventually. But certainly, you got to think about exactly what cards you want to summon in a specific matchup, right? Like what cards can do. So there are cards in this deck that you know, depending on the matchup, you can never go ahead and summon. And you have to really think about that. Like the Mass Deuce is a really important card that's in the deck that's been floating around Luffy decks. But you have to understand what matchups he can and cannot come under. Like he's a very important card versus specifically Zoro and Law, but you cannot summon it versus legitimately anyone else. Unless you have maybe nothing to play, but even then you probably still hold it in your hand. But very importantly, what my Zoro opponent did was I think he was just too in his own head. He was really trying to play around cards that, yes, I did have them, but can you afford to play around cards? And that's a question that I've been asking myself more and more as I play this game. Some games, because the cards are just so powerful in this specific set, can you afford to play around specifically a Punk Gibson right now? Can I afford to play around a Red Hawk in Life? All those are questions that you have to ask yourself. And a lot of the times, if you're even asking yourself that question, you probably can't afford to play around it, right? You mostly can afford to play around cards when you're in an ahead state. And then my opponent was behind, specifically with his very weak opener of summon nothing, summon a 2k, summon a 2k, summon a 2k. He like summoned like 7 2ks this game. He's eventually going to run out of steam, and they're not just cards that are going to be able to actively deal damage to me. And then eventually, he's just going to be unable to win from a board state of double Whitebeard. The only board state that he could have possibly been able to maybe finagle a win from was double Whitebearding back-to-back on my double Whitebeard, right? Because he's the person on the play. He's the initiator. If he goes Whitebeard into Whitebeard, it's a little bit better than me going Whitebeard into Whitebeard. But since he missed his Whitebeard, you know how it is, man. That card is just, what a shenanigans of a card, right? But that concludes this video. I hope this video gives you guys some insight on how you handle the more aggressive matchups as a Luffy. As always, guys, if you like this sort of content, make sure to leave a like down below. If you have any comments, questions, or concerns, any other misplays, or maybe not even necessarily misplays, but questions on like, why did I make this play above this play this turn, go ahead and leave that in the comments section. And as always, if you enjoy this type of content and are thinking of joining the Pirate Crew, make sure to hit that subscribe button, and I will see you guys on the next one. One Piece.